So do we need to talk about that basketball game last night or just leave it alone?
It's not football. That's all I can say.
Oh,
I fell
all
asleep as
right.
well.
Well,
Yeah.
it's never good when somebody wins a national championship and the superstar of the other team snaps his ACL mid-game, because then now you have the excuse of why you didn't win, and I guess next season, right?
Well, they could have won it a couple games ago, right? I mean, it didn't have to be the last game seven if they so
It is what it is. All right. Well, we got a lot to get into. I want to start off uh, with some comparison stats. We were talking a lot last week about the weekly stats, but I want to get into this. So, obviously, the yellow is 2023 and the blue is 2025. And outside of like a slight increase in January, every single month thus far has been behind home sales of 2024. How do we feel? What are your thoughts? Rick, what do you see?
there's lagging. Yeah, there's just lagging sales. I mean, the market's cooled down. I think we've obviously moved towards a balanced market. Inventory hasn't climbed at the rate we'd hoped, and there are a number of reasons why. But yeah, I mean, there's consistency, which is I'm grateful for consistency, but the reality is there's less to share, so you have to get your unfair share.
For sure, for sure. I have a wild prediction. I think June's going to outperform last year, June. I think we're actually going to have a month where we sold more homes than we did a year ago. Yet, perspective wise, if you're feeling a decline, it obviously is in front of us, right? There's the reason for this perspective is what? Why do we need the perspective?
I
Live
mean,
question.
well, the short answer is that without perspective, you can't. Where do you find motivation and inspiration to change your approach? You've got to.
Yeah.
If you're oblivious to the data and you don't, it's that whole definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over, expecting a different result. If the external factors shift, I think the odds of doing the same thing and getting a better result are incrementally worse. So I think it's
Yeah.
intel to help you gauge your approach to winning in any market.
Well, I think most real estate agents, typically, Matt, you teach business planning clinic, like they're setting their 2025 goals in October last year, and yet their goals were probably based off of 2024 numbers with some percentage of increase, right? And then this happens where the year doesn't show up exactly the same way it did last year. And I think you need this perspective to be able to analyze your own performance, right?
100% right. And I think when we were looking at predictions last year, Brett, we predicted a very similar market year over year. And now we have half the year's data. We in July are actually doing a mid-year business planning clinic. And some of that may be increasing metrics, some of that may be ripping up your current business plan and looking towards the second half based off the data we actually have in place.
Yeah. If we get down here to this, I think is really interesting. So, obviously we track median sales price in our geographic area over time. And the pink line is what's considered the 4% price appreciation line. And the years 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024, prices went on a giant appreciation trend. We all lived it, we know it. Yet historically, we probably need prices to get back closer to that 4% line, which just means it doesn't mean they have to all decrease, although some will, but a flattening out of price appreciation is probably healthy from an affordability standpoint. And I think we're obviously there's a pretty big gap between the 4% line and the actual median sales price was about $70,000. Well, I don't think we're going to fill that entire gap in a 12-month period. But I think over the next 2, 3 years, if prices don't appreciate at 10%, 20% like they did over the previous couple years, it'll play catch up, and that's probably healthy from a affordability standpoint.
Yeah, some of that's catch up from the deficit we sustained, but now we're well above, and affordability is the question, and it's interest rate driven. And I have a theory in I'm helping my son buy a house now. It's the first time in a while that I've been actively involved, not just analyzing data, but actively negotiating. And what I'm finding is in the community that he wants to live in, there just aren't a lot of actives to compress or create urgency on the part of the seller to panic. But as
Yeah,
soon as that catches up, I think we're going to see, the scales tip to some degree.
for sure, for sure. Well, if we get here, and I'm going to take out the great, or I'll just do Greater Atlanta. All right. So January 2021, median sales price was like $300,000, a little bit over, right? And then we went all the way up to $450,000 in June last year. That's a 2 year price appreciation of almost 50% of the value of that asset, right? Yet, if you're looking at prices starting around the summer of 2022, it's been pretty much a flat line from where we're at now from the summer of 2022. So are we down? No. Are we up? No. It's pretty flat over the last 2 years of what prices have done. Now, crystal ball, where's it going? We could debate that here in a minute, but I think the perspective is that prices have flattened out over the last 2 years in Atlanta. And that's really just a probably a healthy perspective to allow affordability to catch up, because affordability is strictly median price income in the ability to buy the median price house. So as long as incomes are still going up, which I believe they are, and prices are flattening, we're closing the gap around affordability, and that's probably healthy long term for the real estate market. Boy, y'all are talkative today. I'll leave y'all there. All right.
I mean, you close the loop. We
All
agree.
right. The other thing that I wanted to hit was this inventory number, and apparently we're going to sit here and spin for a minute. Okay. So, here we go. So right now, days on market is at 19. Perspective, it always goes down in the summer and goes up in the winter months. Yet, where's my inventory? Here we go. Sorry, we are,
It's coming.
it's coming. Slow moving today. All right, this is what I wanted to show. So let me take off 22 and 23. All right. So obviously, I think most people are aware that inventory in 2025 has been higher than inventory in 2024, yet it's climbing. And I'm going to make a wild prediction that I think we're going to see 6 months of inventory by the end of the year. And the reason for that is when we go through the numbers, you're seeing the amount of new listings coming on the market, and we're not taking them off the market at the same pace. So inventory is growing right now. And I do believe that's going to continue to grow because it just the amount of inventory or the new listings coming on the market is not slowing down, guys. It's actually speeding up a little bit. And outside of a strong increase in buyer demand, we're probably going to continue to climb on inventory. And what does that mean? Historically, 6 months of inventory is a balanced real estate market. If you've been around in any presentation I've done, I believe north of 4 months is going to feel like a buyer's market. And yet, Rick, you're out there helping your son buy a house right now. Does it feel like a buyer's market?
It really doesn't yet.
No.
It does not. There's just not enough competing inventory to create. What I'm feeling is the response from the other agent is there's not a sense of dire urgency yet.
Yeah. And there's a lag time with sellers uh, getting into realization of what the market really is, right? Do we have a grip on what that lag time is? How long does it take a seller to wake up?
I would just add it's so hyper local, and Brick's probably experiencing that as well, right? But,
Exactly right.
it depends on the neighborhood, right, Mika? It is talking to agents across all different counties. It is so hyper local and competitive in certain neighborhoods, and then you've got 6+ months in others. So we got to have that in mind as well.
There you go. All
But
right.
I
Well,
will
let's
say
jump.
in the neighborhood that we're shopping, where normally inside of a couple of weeks you'd have an offer, even if it's a low offer. This house has been on the market that again, that Luke's interested in. That's over 30 days, zero offers, 4 or 5 showings a week. I mean, it's coming. If short of something, a positive spin in the media, interest rates, world news, it's coming. I mean, the trend
Yeah.
line speaks. How about that?
We're about to
There you
jump
go.
in. We're jumping into that, Rick. You just hold on.
All right. So let's look at Fulton County. If I scroll over here, in Fulton County, 1151 new active listings hit the market in the last 7 days. That's a healthy number, but we've been sitting at that number week after week for quite a while. Um, but we're not necessarily increasing demand. So this is what I'm talking about is this new listings coming on market. It keeps coming and it's coming at a healthy pace, but we're not taking them off the market at the same pace that the new listings are coming. And it's just going to cause inventory to keep growing. Yet 125 said yes to the house in the last 7 days. So went under contract in the last 7 days, 125. We had a week here with 123, but 140 is pretty healthy in Fulton County. So maybe it's a little off, but we're sitting with 271 pending. I love it when it's north of 300, but 271 is healthy. Um, this is where I'm going. Hey, is June going to outperform June 2024? We don't know yet. 220 closed out in the last 7 days, which is a little bit of a lull for Fulton County. So maybe, maybe not. We'll see when the month wraps up, right? If we look at DeKalb County, oh, I should have pre-scrolled. Sorry, guys. Uh, 809. That is a huge number for DeKalb County of new listings coming on market. We haven't seen 800 listings come on the market in 1 week all year. So big, big number of new listings in DeKalb County. 78 went under contract, which is a low number for DeKalb County in the last 7 days. So you see the difference between supply and demand right here. Highest supply number, probably the lowest demand number in quite a while. So that just causes inventory to grow. 199 are pending, which is actually a healthy number for DeKalb when it gets close to 200. Yet 135 closed out, kind of a slower week for DeKalb County in closings. And then if we roll out to Cobb, what are y'all seeing in the numbers while I'm scrolling?
The narrative is we're moving towards a more balanced market.
Yeah. 690 new listings in Cobb County. Matt, that's your county. That's a big number, right? There was a week with 734 and a week with 725, but 690 is a big number of new listings hitting the market in Cobb County. 94 said yes to the house, went under contract. I like it when it's over 100, but 94 is close. 182 pending, a little bit off of where we've been carrying in pending inventory, yet 148 closed out. Man, I mean, all three counties, the closing total in the last 7 days were kind of not great, but not bad either. They were just kind of soft. What do you think?
It was the third week of the month instead of the end of the month, which could next week's data could give us an emotional boost.
Yeah.
But I'm with you. It
Well, let's talk about this week. So I pulled mortgage rates this morning, and it dawned on me this little fine print. When you go to Mortgage News Daily, this rate they post is from 4 p.m. of the last weekday. So this was 4 p.m. Friday's interest rate. Something transpired between Friday and today, which we're going to get to. So the real question is what's going to happen to interest rates going forward? And there's an article I'm going to encourage all of you to download and read from Housing Wire, which says, what will mortgage rates react, or how will mortgage rates react to U.S. bombing of Iran? And before we jump into this article, I think we should just have a conversation of, obviously there was an event that happened over the weekend where the U.S. had dropped some bombs in Iran. And we have associates, obviously, from all different backgrounds. I'm sure there are some associates that have family members that have been affected, and care and concern, of course. And yet, I don't think our opinion on that specifically is what's most relevant that people are wanting. I think our opinion of what it means for the real estate industry or the real estate market is probably our expertise that we can offer some advice around. But I think the question that I want to answer today, Rick, in our opinion, and Matt, is if I'm a buyer and you're out there showing me houses, what am I thinking about today on Monday after the events that transpired over the weekend? Or if I'm a seller and I'm talking to my agent here on Monday after what transpired over the weekend, what are the thoughts? What are the questions that are running through my head? I'll start there.
Well, just like the market map, mentioned is hyper local. I think reaction to news is hypersensitive to that individual too. So I think it starts by coming from curiosity and not making assumptions that you know how your client feels about current events. And so I just think going, hey, what are your thoughts or what do you think and how do you feel? And then gauge your approach relative to their emotional energy, I think is step one. Will there be a ripple effect? There could be. And I think it hinges on what happens next. I think everyone kind of sat back and went, holy cow, that really happened. But I remember 9/11, and I had 35 listings on the market at the time. I was still actively selling, and the entire world locked up for about 90 days. I didn't sell a listing. I was rethinking my career choice January 1. It happened obviously in September, and 3.5 months later, I've run out of things to tell my sellers in terms of when the market's going to come back or when active buyer engagement's going to improve. And for whatever reason, and this is what I would share with my clients, that whole this too shall pass mentality. Like this is another time and space where circumstances and external factors we can't control are going on. What does your internal, barometer tell you to do? Where's your heart? Where's your head? And in some cases, there's opportunity because of uncertainty. In other cases, maybe it is the right thing to do to take a deep breath. And I think that comes back to honoring your client's temperature, energy, and emotional construct. But January 1, the world woke up, and I think I sold half my listings in 60 days and back in business. But for a minute, I was wondering, is what's going on? That was my thought. And I bet that's the thought for a lot of people.
Matt, what
Yeah,
you got?
I would just add, Brett, I think what you were asking is, most people would have fear at this point and have some uncertainty. And I think as a local economist of choice, we're always there to respond more with leading with data rather than fear. So if I was putting out content and I was having conversations and coming from curiosity, I would also be prepared with data and trends. And if you look at this year, we're going to talk about in the article, the majority of the things that have gone on geopolitical have not really affected rates. What whatsoever like people would think. So facts and trends and graphics and everything we talk about in these conversations are all set up with, hey, let's pass that on. Let's be the economists. Let's provide calm in storms of data versus reacting to every single thing. And the last thing I'll add is under the age of 35, 37, I saw a study the other day, and the main thing those people are looking for, which is the first time buyers nowadays, is comfortability. And growing up with the old phones, it's a little bit before Rick and Brett's time.
Are you trying to play
Everything
the millennial card here?
I'm playing it. I'm
All
a good
right.
10 years earlier playing it. We grew up, I was almost in that group. We grew up with the phone and the news and everything we're seeing on TV. Rick and Brett grew up where they'd hear about it and then they'd go on and maybe hear about it in the news and they'd go on, but they can never get away from it. So thinking of that in mind and thinking of how your brand works, I would be searching for comfortability with data and stats and trust, especially in these times, you can really stand out.
Yeah, I think that's spot on, Matt. I think if somebody has fear, if a buyer or seller has fear, that's an emotional feeling, right? Like that's an emotion. And where I think these calls are very powerful is we're giving you the facts, we're giving you the data, we're giving you the news articles to pass along. And this housing wire, which I'm going to put back up in just a second, is probably one of the best articles that you could hand to a buyer or seller right now, because it's so fact based, and it really doesn't predict that we're going to change that much. Like I do think we're going to have interest rates come down as a result. Um, but let's dive into it for a second. So what is this article talking about? The backdrop, mortgage rates have been very calm lately, even last week, featuring a significant amount of economic data. The Fed did not change rates last week. And there's a second factor, which we'll get into in a minute, which is there's an immense pressure around the Federal Reserve Chair to resign. So that those are happening, right? Yet, what do we expect to happen as a result of the bombing in Iran? I think it is probably a given that oil prices are going to go up. And what does that mean for a real estate agent? You're probably going to pay more money for gas. Does that mean we're in a higher inventory market? You're probably going to show more homes. So your actual pocketbook might actually get affected a little bit in terms of gas prices and that kind of thing. Yet, uh, when oil goes up, it tends to put more money in our economy, meaning we're spending more money. We're spending more money on gas. People that are connected to the oh my gosh, the word slipping me. The market where oil is are tending to make more money, and I don't know that it's a good or a bad thing, but in terms of real estate, it typically translates to more money in the real estate industry when the price of oil goes up. The second part of this is what's going to happen to the stock market. And the reason we ask that question is when the stock market gets affected negatively, it in a roundabout way translates to mortgage rates coming down. So we don't know what the stock market's going to do today. It just opened a little over an hour ago. And depending on what happens to the stock market today, it'll affect where interest rates go in the near future. Yet my personal crystal ball is I think we're going to see rates closer to 6.5 to 6.75 in the next 90 days. Does that reduction in interest rates create an increase in buyer demand? I hope so. I don't know that it necessarily will, but I do think rates coming down a little bit helps with affordability. And I think that it could increase buyer demand. And I'm still, in spite of the events over the weekend, I'm still going to go on record and predict that third quarter is going to be a pretty strong quarter. What would y'all read this article? What'd you take from it? Give us your predictions.
It sounded like to some degree the inverse of logic was playing out. that just because external factors in the Middle East, you'd expect a bond impact and that would trickle down into rate, but it hasn't shown up, because this isn't the first unrest overseas, So I don't know. The Fed's position will be interesting to watch relative to the ongoing news as it comes in. That's the bottom line. Mika made a comment that, maybe if rates do go down, people will start to think they'll continue to go down. My answer to that is I think we've finally kind of hurdled that sense of hope that things are going to dramatically change. And I think subtle change is good change, and consistency is good for consumer confidence. So again, hyperlocal conversations with your clients, but you need to meet them where they are and then show them how timing is less important than lifestyle and life experience, and not losing an opportunity that enhances their time on earth. It's that simple. There's a lot of noise and it's easy to get distracted.
All
What's the
right,
real goal?
Racinos.
That's the question.
I was gonna comment this juxtaposition actually is why A, I love this company, but also why I love these calls and interactions, because Rick is right. This isn't new. We have seen this in our industry before, but what Matt said, how people are taking the information in. I saw posts over the weekend of a generation that is saying they are tired of these once in a lifetime events that keep happening, coronavirus, then this. I mean, that's the feelings that are out there. So these conversations, the stabilizing conversations are huge. So what y'all are giving us is info that I can't wait to share. Appreciate
There
it.
you go.
Yeah.
Right, so here's the other big thing that's kind of affecting the industry, or could affect our industry, is there. The article says Pulte, but let me unpack that for a second. So there is pressure from entities on Jerome Powell to resign. Jerome Powell is the Federal Reserve Chair. He's probably arguably one of the most powerful people in the United States in terms of controlling fiscal policy. Um, but there is this agency called the Federal Housing Finance Agency. And the chair of that is a Pulte guy. That's why Pulte's getting drawn into this. But it's actually the Federal Housing Finance Agency and the current administration that's putting pressure on Jerome Powell to step down. And this is the statement. It says Jerome Powell is the main reason for the housing supply crisis in this country. Uh, by improperly keeping interest rates high, Jerome Powell is trapping homeowners in low rate mortgages and choking off existing home sales, directly fueling the housing supply crisis. He must lower rates. So there is pressure being put on this Federal Reserve, and specifically the Federal Reserve Chair, to bring these interest rates down. Now, regardless if we agree or disagree, I think we can probably live in a probability scenario that interest rates are going to come down in the near future. Whether it's the event that happened in Iran over the weekend or the pressure being put on the Federal Reserve Chair, I think affordability is really a strong pressure being put on the US economy right now. And one of the ways to fix that is to bring the interest rates down. And I think we're going to benefit from this as an industry if rates can start to come down a little bit. What do you make?
We've seen consistent inflation numbers, and they've been brought down to a reasonable level, in my humble opinion, and from what I've read. So I don't see any reason why subtle adjustments aren't a good idea. And it may be, again, fueled by social pressure or the reality that, it's going to keep everybody moving forward, which is important in our country to keep money moving. But at the end of the day, their goal was to hedge some of the inflation numbers that were starting to skyrocket. And again, whether they decide they have or haven't, we'll see.
All right. I need to hit one other article before we run out of time. So Keller Williams was hit with a new telemarketing lawsuit recently. Compass was also hit, so it's not exclusive to us. But here's what you need to know. So there's a buyer or seller, I can't remember, a homeowner in New York that a Keller Williams agent sent unsolicited text messaging, advertising her services, according to the lawsuit, and the her number is on the do not call list. But here's what she's saying. Screenshots included in the complaint show that the associate broker told Thayer she received her information from Zillow and asked if Thayer was interested in her real estate services. I guarantee you that's a normal thing an agent does, where they receive an online lead, whether it was Zillow or any online lead, and starts texting that prospective client. Well, what the do not call list does include text messaging. And the thing that makes me nervous about this is E&O does not cover the TCPA. So once again, we're here in a leadership position saying, hey, you got to pay attention to this stuff. You've got to be checking numbers against the Telephone Consumer Protection Act. It's not just the pestering expired listing call these days. It's also text messaging. And you got to be very prudent with your lead generation methods because there are lawsuits being filed. It's not just us, a leader standing in front of a room saying, don't do this, check the do not call list. Like people are starting to get sued on it. So be aware. Final words.
Two parts of that. I would say number one, on the do not call, run them through the scrub. Even the fine print in your CRM protects your CRM, not you. Second part is this all comes back to 2 to 3 hours of generating business a day, right? So if we're not calling our database and looking for motivated people, that's who's buying right now. These rate increases, inventory increases, hopefully they come, but at the end of the day, that's not going to be a significant chunk because it's not going to be a huge. We're looking for the motivated. And then Manny had a great point. This is great content to just take and put out there in your social media outlets right now on looking different than everything else that's in the news. So that'd be my final points.
Boom, boom. We start and end on time, or because of Matt, we're 2 minutes late. I'll blame Matt.
Please.
All right.
That
Bye,
was
guys.
so pertinent. Good points.
Great job, y'all.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.